There's a word we Filipinos rarely pause long enough to celebrate: discarte. It does not translate clearly into English. It is part ingenuity, part courage, part instinctive problem solving, or the quiet art of making something beautiful out of whatever you have. In my childhood, I have memories of my mom's community work and creative discarte, where she taught the unemployed ladies of our community how to cut out newspaper strips to turn them into paper mache and formed into swirly patterns on plyboards, add beads, and we had beautiful headboards for the beds. It is the same discarte what the community does when a typhoon strips a barangay bare, and by the following week, the neighbors have already begun to rebuild. Discarte is not poverty, it is genius born of necessity, and it may be the single most powerful sustainability tool our nation possesses. I say this not as a slogan, but as a lived conviction. Running EcoHotels in the Philippines has taught me that the global agenda, with its ambitious sustainable development goals, did not arrive here with empty hands expecting to fill them. It arrived to find the Filipinos had already been practicing sustainability long before the United Nations ever gave it a name. We were never waiting for the world to teach us how to live within our means. We have always known. The question is whether we will finally own that knowledge and build our future upon it. SDG 11 is not a Western ideal. It is a Filipino story. Sustainable Development Goal 11 calls on the world to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. When I first encountered that language, my honest reaction was, look around you. Walk through the old towns of Batangas, to the centuries-old coral stone houses of Miagao, to the ancestral terraces of Ifugao, that have fed communities for 2,000 years without a drop of synthetic fertilizer. Those are not ruins, they are proofs of concept. The SDG framework asks nations to reduce environmental impact, provide safe housing, protect cultural heritage, improve waste management, and ensure that economic growth does not come at the cost of the communities that host it. Every one of those mandates maps directly into something the Filipino people have done in varying and imperfect ways across generations. What we lack is not the instinct. What we sometimes lack is the platform, the capital, and the collective confidence to scale what we already know how to do. That is where hospitality comes in and where EcoHotels comes in. And that is why EcoHotels is not simply a business. It is a deliberate wager that the best version of sustainable community development in this country will look Filipino and not imported. My generation grew up brainwashed that anything from West is best. That thinking has been replaced today by proudly Filipino, or love Philippines, or only in the Philippines. Pride in who we are. When people hear EcoHotel, many picture solar panels, bamboo lampshades, composting and recycle signs. That is the aesthetic of sustainability, and aesthetics matter. But the substance of it's something far more demanding and far more local. In the Philippines, building sustainably means understanding that your property sits inside the living community, not on top of it. It means sourcing from local farmers because the carbon footprint of an ingredient flown in from abroad is absurd when we grow the finest produce on earth. It means hiring from the barangay, training people whose families have lived on this land for 5 generations, and ensuring that the tourism peso circulates through the neighborhood instead of disappearing into a foreign holding company. It means building with materials that have been used here for centuries: bamboo, rattan, pogon, volcanic stones, tabique pampango or wattle and daub, recycled hardwood from demolished homes. These are not compromises in quality. In many cases, they even outperform imported alternatives in our climate, survive our earthquakes more gracefully, and cost a fraction of the price, which means the savings can go directly into the wages of the people who built them. I want to speak directly to my fellow Filipinos here because I believe we carry an unspoken inferiority complex about our own ways of doing things. We have been taught too often that modernity arrives from elsewhere and that the right way to build, to manage waste, to govern a community must carry a foreign stamp of approval before it counts. Let me offer a counter-narrative. The Filipino who builds a bahay kubo understands passive cooling, the raised floor, the woven walls that breathe, the steep roof that sheds both rain and heat without ever having taken an architecture course. The tindera who reuses every plastic bag 3 times before surrendering it to the recycler understands circular economy before she has ever heard the term. The kapitan ng barangay who organizes a community cleanup drive is practicing participatory urban governance at exactly the same scale that SDG 11 envisions for the world's most livable cities. These are not small things dressed up in big language. They are evidence of a civilization with deep ecological intelligence. One that has been surviving typhoons, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and colonial disruption for centuries precisely because it learned how to adapt, reuse, and rebuild. What EcoHotels tries to do and what I believe the entire Philippine tourism and real estate sector should aspire to do, formalize it, amplify that intelligence. Take the wisdom that is already here. Give it resources, give it systems, give it the recognition it deserves, and watch what it can do. SDG 11 is not a line item in a corporate responsibility report. It is the operating philosophy. Here's what that looks like on the ground. Local supply chains first. We partner with smallholder farmers, local weavers, and neighborhood food producers. When a guest eats at our restaurant, the ingredients travel a fraction of the distance that a standard hotel's provisions would. That is not just because we are cutting costs, it is emission reduction plus human benefit. Our properties operate on a near-zero waste philosophy. Kitchen waste is compost for the garden. Gray water is treated and used for irrigation. Construction materials that would otherwise end up in a landfill are repurposed into furniture, fixtures, and decor. Every piece that carries a story of rescue is a small lesson for every guest who notices it. We do not build hotels that could have been dropped in from Singapore or Dubai. Our properties are designed to belong, to reflect the vernacular architecture of each location, to cool themselves using the same logic a nipa hut uses, and to age gracefully with their surroundings rather than fighting the climate. We train and employ locally, pay above market wages where we can, and reinvest a portion of revenue into community programs, not because a government regulation requires it, but because a hotel that depletes its neighborhood is destroying its own foundation. Sustainable hospitality and community well-being are the same thing. SDG 11 has a target date. The world has agreed to work towards sustainable, inclusive communities. But targets do not build anything, people do. And I believe Filipinos are uniquely positioned to lead this work, not follow it, if we choose to. What would it look like if every developer in this country committed to sourcing 30% of their materials locally? What would it look like if every municipality took its indigenous water management practices as seriously as it takes imported concrete drainage systems? What would it look like if our architects started applying vernacular design and started presenting it to the world as a climate-intelligent tradition that it genuinely is, and from our own ingenuity? It would look, I suspect, like the Philippines that our grandparents actually lived in, before the idea took hold that progress meant erasing what was here and replacing it with something that came from somewhere else. We are a nation of problem solvers. We are a nation that holds funerals and fiestas back to back because we understand that grief and joy are neighbors, that hardship does not excuse you from beauty, that some sensibility, practical, humane, creative, enduring, is exactly what the sustainable city of the 21st century needs. The world is only just beginning to learn what we have always known, that the most resilient communities are built on relationships, not just resources. I started EcoHotels because I believe that Filipino resourcefulness, formalized and respected, is a world-class competitive advantage. I've watched it in action in every property we have opened, and In the carpenter who invented the joinery technique because the right tool was not available. In the housekeeper who figured out a zero-chemical cleaning method. From ingredients in the kitchen. In the community elder who drew from memory a drainage map of the land that no survey had ever captured. These are not workarounds, they are innovations. And they are happening quietly in every corner of this archipelago every single day. SDG 11 asks the world to build sustainable cities and communities. My message to every Filipino is simple. We are not starting from zero. We are starting here from centuries of earned wisdom, from an unbroken tradition of making the most of what we have, from the kind of resourcefulness that does not need a brand name to be real. We are enough. We have always been enough. Now let us build accordingly.